Well, good evening, folks, and thank you for coming to the July 17 version of the Community Development Committee. We're going to start out asking for a roll call.
Sean Anderson.
Present.
Scott Counter.
Present.
Dan Hansen.
Here.
Jerry Van Someren.
Present.
Ryan Shirley.
Present.
Very good. And in terms of minutes approval, we have two meetings to look at. We have Thursday, June 15, and Monday, June 19. Does anybody have anything, any of the committee members have anything to add or talk about or question, whatever? No? I have one little thing. Juliet asked you to change on June 15, please mark Sean Anderson excused. Thank you. Otherwise, I would suggest that they stand approved. As far as public comment goes, I'd ask the public to hold their comments on the three. We'll have three public hearings. In terms of, at this moment, I'd like to explain how this meeting will be ordered. There's a couple of changes to the agenda, and what we're doing is reopening the public hearings for both the Green Pastures Family Farm, which is the Ishan, and the Lawrence rezoning. So there will be the Ellis, which is Town of Star Prairie, the Green Pastures, and the Lawrence, taken in that order. Item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. And then after each public hearing, we will do the business item 1, 2, and 3, taken in order. So it'll be public hearing, business item, etc. So, having said that, will there be any public comment on anything else which is on or off the agenda? Does anybody have anything they'd like to say other than those three public hearings, which will be coming up right away? Any other public comment? Alrighty then. Moving on, I would like to open public hearing on Ellis, Town of Star Prairie, and we'd ask for a staff report, and I believe that is Mike and Ellen. Mike Wozniak, thank you.
There we go. Okay. Committee members, this item is consideration of a road setback reduction waiver request and involving a public hearing. This request is from the applicant April Ellis. I would note that the item in question involves property located at 2116 81st Street, and this is in the town of Star Prairie, Somerset mailing address. The property in question is also part of a CSM, as noted on the page here, and is located in an R2 zone district. The waiver request is for a requirement in the county's land division ordinance, chapter 13, section 13.10B1. This involves a waiver to a setback of 100 feet that was established on the CSM, and the request being to the waiver to allow the front yard setback from the right-of-way to go to 50 feet, which is the current zoning ordinance requirement in the R2 zone district. Included with the staff report was a copy of the applicant's application provided in the packet to the committee and available to the public. You've seen this slide, committee members, many times, so I won't go through the history of the structure setbacks, waiver, and the past requirements and current requirement. I would note that this is a pre-2006 CSM, and hence the 100-foot requirement. That was changed in the county zoning in 2006, and so the requirements for land division since that time have required a 50-foot setback from the right-of-way. And the process to change that involves action by the committee and also a correction instrument being prepared by a land surveyor. And again, what's being requested is to waive the 100-foot requirement and go to the 50-foot requirement that's the standard currently in our county zoning ordinance from the right-of-way along 81st Street. And a correction instrument would be prepared by a registered land surveyor and would have to be recorded at the Register of Deeds office, noting the removal of the existing structure setback as shown on the recorded lot. This slide includes a site map, excerpt from a site map provided by the applicant, and you can see on this map the 81st Street right-of-way indicated, and they've indicated a potential siting of a home 50 feet back if the setback waiver is granted. The yellow line that's been superimposed on here would represent the existing 100-foot setback. Also pertinent on this slide is there is a pond that bisects the property, and that pond is considered shoreland, navigable, and there is a 75-foot setback that applies from the pond, and that setback line that I'm identifying with my cursor comes into play because it really limits the area of the site that could be built on if the 100-foot setback is applied. If the setback waiver were to be granted, there's still a limited area on the site to build, but it's more manageable in terms of being able to construct a dwelling and an associated driveway than if it was limited to the small triangular-shaped area currently available with a 100-foot setback. This is just an aerial photo that does show that pond that kind of bisects the property. There's some other water resources in the general vicinity, and also you can see some of the dwellings on the abutting properties within the subdivision. I would note that we had initially received a comment from a neighboring property owner, which I've noted, 2105 81st Street, that had concerns about potential impacts on views and aesthetics if the setback waiver is granted to allow construction on 2116 81st Street. We've since received a couple other comments, and maybe this would be a convenient time for me to just briefly reference these. Copies, I think, have been provided to the committee. First of all, today we received a letter from Karen Kellner at 2125 81st Street, and which is kind of across 81st, kitty corner to the what would be the northeast side of the Ellis property. I'll note that just generally, the gist of the letter is it opposes the setback waiver on safety concerns, aesthetic concerns, and just feels it doesn't meet the criteria that the committee is supposed to use to grant the setback waiver. Now, one thing I would note in just a reaction to this letter is that with your action, you're granting a waiver. If you were to approve it, you'd be granting a waiver to the 100-foot setback requirement to potentially allow a structure to be built 50 feet from the right-of-way. Now, because this lot has shoreland area, there will be a shoreland land use permit required that would actually address the specific siting of a home. There are a variety of issues that come into play, and I'll get into these in just a moment, but there are drainage easements on this lot, and there's a shoreland area, as I've already indicated, and there's also some steeper slopes, some topography. So there are a lot of constraints on where where construction may take place on this lot. The other comment that was received by email today, and this was received from Jim Thompson at 2126 81st Street, which is essentially one lot away on the end of the cul-de-sac street here. And again, it raises concerns about aesthetic impacts and potentially water management, stormwater impacts, if the waiver were to be granted and the home were to be constructed where proposed in the application that we've received. In our staff report, we've identified issues that we think as staff are relevant pertaining to the request. As noted, the 100-foot structure setback from the right-of-way is platted along 81st. The buildable area on the lot is extremely limited, as I've already stated, based on characteristics including steep slopes in key areas that impact the ability to access portions of the lot. Getting to the back of the lot, for example, would be very difficult, if not impossible, because of the drainage easement that around the pond that bisects the property. There are 3 drainage easements present on the site, and they limit where you can build on this property. And also, because the lot's bisected by the pond and is regulated under the Shoreland Overlay District, the required setback from the ordinary high water mark limits building area, especially at the front of the lot, but also on the back portion of the lot, if you could even get there with driveway access. We included another graphic in the staff report. The colored areas, the lavender and areas that show up in color on this are steeper slopes ranging from greater to 12 to greater than 25% slopes. So there are limitations for slope. The hatched areas on this site include drainage easements up in the east corner through the center, bisecting the site, and up in the very north corner of the lot as well. We've roughed in approximate location for where the home is proposed to go. Again, there would be a more specific plan. There was a site plan included in the setback waiver application. But if this waiver is granted, there would also have to be a administrative permit, a land use permit, which would deal with specific siting as well as stormwater management and any revegetation or erosion sediment control that would be required with grading and filling and construction activity. We haven't received any comments from the town of Star Prairie, and I've alluded to the comments received from the public already on this, so I won't reiterate those. And we may have folks here present that will speak at public hearing to the concerns. I'm not going to read through the standards that you use because you've seen them many times to consider setback waivers, but I've displayed them on the screen. And if committee members, if you have any questions, feel free to direct them my way. We've included some draft findings for the committee's consideration, 1 through 5, as noted on the in the staff report here. And again, because of the limitations on this site, we believe that the reduced structure setback, which is the normal setback that's been used from right-of-way since 2006, that it would allow the lot or structure on the lot to be in greater compliance with the objectives and standards of Chapter 15. Also, I note that due to the topography, existing topography, drainage easements, and shoreland overlay district 75-foot setback, the area available to construct a dwelling is very limited. We note in number 3 that the reduced structure setback will allow the applicant to construct a dwelling in the only practical location on the lot. And we haven't received comments from the town. And you might amend for the record finding number 5 to indicate the additional comments that have been received from the public today in the form of the email and the letter that have been provided to you. Our staff recommendation is that the Community Development Committee approve the setback reduction from 100 to 50 feet from 81st Street right-of-way based on staff findings 1 through 5, and subject to the condition that a Wisconsin registered land surveyor must record with the Register of Deeds office a correction instrument to reduce the setback per section 13.10B1 of our land division ordinance. At that, staff are available to answer any questions that may come up either before or after public hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. At this point, I'd like to ask anybody in the public who'd like to speak in favor of this variance. Is there anybody here? Right. You'd like to speak in favor?
Yes.
Please step up to the podium. Give us your name, where you live, and introduce yourself.
I'm the applicant, April Ellis, and I live here in Hudson currently. This is where I plan to build my dream home, hopefully, and I want to assure those that may be my future neighbors that my desire is to keep this property as natural as possible. I don't really plan to have a yard because I quite frankly don't want to have to take care of it. I mean, just a little bit of a yard, and hopefully my grandson can come mow for me. But my grandfather was a naturalist in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and I love nature, and I do not plan to disturb that lot any more than necessary. I have repeatedly told my builder, you will not cut down any more trees than is absolutely necessary to build my home. So, and I look forward to being a Somerset resident soon.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody who'd like to speak against this setback waiver? All right, is there anybody who has any general comments about this setback waiver? Oh, I'm sorry. Ma'am, please step up to the podium and introduce yourself. Say where you live.
My name is Teresa Lindahl. I live at 2105 81st Street, which is directly across the street from the property of the proposed building site. The current aesthetics of our neighborhood speak nature, as April just mentioned. Driving into the cul-de-sac, what you would see is lush green walls of trees that shelter the road. Many of the houses are completely hidden by trees, and those that are visible are set back very far. The current houses in the cul-de-sac are set back from the center line of the road 138 feet, 148, 334, 180, 214, 187, 353 feet, 297 feet, and 173 feet from the center line of the road. The proposed variance in the setback statute for our subdivision would place this new home less than 100 feet from the center line. This home would, to put it bluntly, stick out like a sore thumb. When you drive through the neighborhood, all you see are trees, and then you would drive through and there would be, boom, a house right there. In reviewing the property lines on the website, it appears that no variance is necessary. The house can easily be built within the 100-foot public right-of-way setback on the northeast side of the property. Building here would allow the shortest dimension of the house to be up to 55 feet. This would easily make the house the largest home in the neighborhood. The property line between the public right-of-way and the high water mark measures 260 feet. But more ideally, and I understand that you guys said that putting the driveway into that northwest corner of the property would be challenging, but that is where I would build if I were to build on this lot. I would find a way to get an easement through there on that west side of the property and build on. There's a huge plot of land there. And I believe that is the intent, the original intent in the dividing of this unique piece of property when they initially put in the Rolling Oaks subdivision. According to section 1310B1A2, it says a setback reduction shall only be allowed in the unusual circumstance where a reduction of the setback will allow the latter structure on the lot to be in greater compliance with the objectives and standards of this ordinance in Chapter 17 of the St. Croix County Zoning Ordinance, and will not negatively impact the layout, design, continuity, or aesthetics of the neighborhood. It says it shall only be allowed if that doesn't happen. So according to that statute, there is no way that property can be built because it will impact the layout, design, continuity, and aesthetics of the neighborhood. And I don't think anybody can argue that. The staff recommendation of changing the setback would completely contradict that statute. I feel the setback reduction will negatively affect the layout, design, continuity, and aesthetics of our neighborhood. April, we are excited to have new neighbors. We welcome new neighbors into our neighborhood, and we trust that when your new home and construction is complete, you will be thankful to have the privacy and the location that you've chosen to build that the rest of us in the Rolling Oaks subdivision enjoy. And I don't think that you would enjoy it if the house stood out like a sore thumb. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to make a comment, either for or against or general, with regard to this setback waiver?
Hi, I'm Ryan Stevenson. I live at 2124 81st Street, which is the neighboring property. So my wife and I, we moved out there for privacy. We wanted to have our own little space. We did our research. We knew that lot wasn't buildable next to us prior. We talked to the previous owner, our realtor, our own research. So we knew that was just gonna stay an open lot while we were there. So I guess my biggest concern, if there's a property there that is built, right now with the recommended area where you're gonna put it, it's probably 50 feet from my garage. So there goes the privacy of the property we just bought. So, and that's kind of how the whole cul-de-sac is built. There's setbacks on every house we're all put in the back of our property, just so we can have our own little space. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on the setback waiver?
Can I make another comment?
Sure, go ahead. This will be the last comment, I think.
I feel it very unfortunate that you were told that, because if that was the case, the lot should have never been for sale. And I agree with you. If this is not approved, that lot needs to be designated as a wetland, a park, or whatever, because I should have never been able to buy that lot with the intention of building a house. And unfortunately, the people that I bought it from told me that I could. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else like to make a comment? And no more second comments or adjudication, just first comments. All right, then we'll wrap up the public hearing, and we'll move into business item number 1 and let the committee discuss and vote on the item. And I'd entertain a motion. We do have the option, putting it on the table and asking Township what they think about it. They chickened out.
Has this even been in front of their plan commission or anything yet?
The town would have been made aware of it, and they have the choice. They do not have to give a recommendation. So if they chose not to, they chose not to.
On setback waivers, it's been kind of a mixed bag. We occasionally get a comment from a town, but often we have not on these setback waivers.
I'm assuming the town usually just assumes, unless, probably 99% of the time, that it's just gonna go through, because it's a pretty standard thing since the setback changed or the process came in.
And is there a covenant for this neighborhood? Is it any kind of an agreement when you purchase homes in this area that there's a standard setback or not?
It's just because it was placed on the CSM as in some towns that was done again prior to the change in 2006. So that's why the 100 foot is required. I don't believe, I'm not aware of any covenants that would otherwise dictate that.
Chair Hansen, may I interrupt? I did look on the Town of Star Prairie's Plan Commission website. It indicates that on Wednesday, July 19th at 6:30, the Ellis variance request is on the agenda. So that would be this Wednesday. Coming up 2 days from now.
If that's the case, I'd make a motion then, if that's the case, that that's going in their agenda and through their process, that we would table this until our next meeting. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to table this until our next meeting. Let's put her to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. We'll move on to our next public hearing, which is going to be for Green Pastures Family Farm, Aishan. John?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. The second item on your agenda tonight is a rezoning application that was tabled from last month's meeting. And specifically, this application is for Green Pastures Family Farm in the town of Kinnikinnick. The primary reason why the item was tabled was because of the sequencing of the meetings. The town of Kinnikinnick did not have the sequence of meetings in place to provide the town or the county a recommendation by last month's meeting. So for purposes of tonight, we've already had the public hearing. We went through the staff report and the details. I'm just going to walk through some of the basics to give the committee a little bit of a refresher, and then go into the recommendation, and then leave it open for discussion and, of course, public comment. So specifically, the applicants are Green Pastures Family Farm, Scott Eichen. The property is in the town of Kinnikinnick at 263 Liberty Road. The current zoning of the parcel is Ag 2 agriculture. The proposed zoning is R2, and the applicant desires to take 2.735 acres of the 10-acre parcel and zone it from Ag 2 to R2, with the intention of remodeling an existing building for another dwelling unit. The minimum lot size requirement for parcels in the R2 is 2 acres. The minimum lot size requirement for parcels zoned Ag 2 is 3 acres. The resulting lot sizes would exceed these requirements, and we'll show a survey or a proposed survey in just a moment. General location map, you can see Highway 35 at my cursor connecting River Falls to Hudson, Highway 65 from River Falls to Roberts, and then Liberty Road runs south off of Highway 65. The parcel, the subject parcel is highlighted in red. Again, 10 acres total. A little bit more of a zoomed in picture. You see the 10 acres, the Kinnikinnick River, and associated wetlands on the southern portion of the site, existing barn outbuildings. The existing single-family home is right here, and this would be the structure that would be remodeled into the second dwelling. Again, this is the proposed certified survey map. The red line going across the map of the 10 acres would be lot 4. That would be the 2.735 acre parcel for the existing homestead. South of that would be proposed lot 5, and that would be 7.37 acres. With this existing building to be converted to a dwelling, it would not be expanded. They would need to utilize the existing footprint. And again, just zooming out, this shows the broader regional perspective of the area. Again, mostly agriculture in the area. We do have some scattered home sites further south on Liberty Road. You can see the Kinnikinnick River flowing through the south portion of the site. Some photos from Liberty Road, looking northeast from the Kinnick, and then looking looking south, north of the site along Liberty Road. At the last meeting, we went through some of the general zoning requirements. We talked about the farmland preservation plan and proximity to the property. We looked at the county comprehensive plan as well as the town comprehensive plan. We talked about the farmland preservation plan map, natural resource features, permitting requirements that would be needed if the rezoning application is approved. The primary reason why the item was tabled was, again, to give town of Kinnikinnick a little bit more time because of the sequence of meetings. On June 21st, the Town Planning Commission reviewed the rezoning and recommended approval of the rezoning, as did the town board at their July 11th meeting, so just about a week ago. At the last meeting, we also walked through some of the staff comments in review, looking at some of the staff recommendations and findings. We talked about the consistency of the county comprehensive plan matching up with the proposed zoning application. The land use plans of the town of Kinnikinnick and the St. Croix County land use plan supported the rezoning request to R2. Not only the future land use map, but some of the defined categories representing the map. We also talked about it being consistent with standards in Chapter 15 zoning. And then when a county takes ag zoning out of Ag 1 or Ag 2, the county is required to answer a series of questions and provide those to the state, which we've done. And we walked through at the last meeting 5A through 5D. I won't read through all of those. So in essence, again, the hearing or the issue was tabled till tonight to give the town of Kinnikinnick some time to make their recommendation. We just walked through that. So that really concludes the overview. If there are other specific questions you might have within the report, staff will be happy to answer those. That concludes the overview.
Thanks, John. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak for or against this rezoning for Ishan, for the Green Pastures Family Farm? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on this and move into business item number 2. Committee, do we have a motion?
I just want to, I have a question for clarification from John. You said that that cannot be expanded beyond the size of that existing building, is that correct?
Correct.
So how does that get sent to the town of Kinnikinnick, who would be giving the building permit?
So once the county board makes a final decision, you're going to be recommending tonight, but once the county board makes a final decision, that decision is forwarded to the applicant and the town of Kinnikinnick. So we'll have that as part of the record, and then they'll know the parameters of the approval.
Okay. With that said, I make a motion that we move forward with this. We were waiting for the Kinnikinnick to make the decision they have. Let's move forward.
Very good. Now any discussion by the committee? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? It passes unanimously. Very well. Thank you very much. At this point, we'll move into our third public hearing, which will be at Lawrence, and we'll ask for staff report.
So much like the last item you just reviewed and took action on, this rezoning application was also a result of a tabling of this item back in May, if the committee recalls, back on May 18th. This rezoning application is for the Brian Lawrence property at 331 County Road Double J in the town of Kinnikinnick. In this particular case, the applicant is seeking to rezone 24 acres from the R2 residential district to the Ag 2 residential district. Based on some of the application information, the applicant was desiring to conduct some agricultural entertainment activities on the property. I'm just going to walk through, again, like I did last time, just some of the general location of the property. Again, 331 County J. We have Highway 65 coming up from River Falls to Roberts. And then going eastbound on County J, the parcel in red, 24 acres, sits at the intersection of County J and Double J. Again, looking at the property highlighted in red, it kind of is narrower at County J and then expands as it goes south. You see the Kinnikinnick River running east-west at the bottom of the property, some associated wetlands. You see the main horse barn facility in this location with the principal dwelling right here. And then at the top of the property, closer to County J, we have some of the pastures for the horses. Again, generally speaking, we have scattered single-family homes to the north of the site, a larger lot single-family home to the south. The town hall is located adjacent to the northwest of the Lawrence parcel, and a couple single-family homes in this location. And then panning out just a little bit to give you a broader perspective. Again, some of the houses right off of County J, but looking at a wider swath, you see it's wooded areas, agriculture, tilled properties, with the Kinnick continuing to flow to the west and southwest. These are just some Google Street views we walked through at the last meeting. The horse pastures in the foreground. This is looking southeast from County J and Double J. And again, this is looking southwest along County J. The blue arrow just denotes the horse barn facility, again with the pastures in the foreground. We included some maps to show some distances from existing homes to the horse barn facility. And then again, we walked through the general zoning, some of the natural resource features. We took a look at the Town of Kinnick Comprehensive Plan and how they defined that property within their land use plan, with it being duly representative agriculture and residential being allowed in this area. The County Comprehensive Plan also mirrored the town plan, with it being an ag mixed rural residential designation. We also took a look at the farmland preservation plan, which we talked about in more detail in May. But again, when the county adopted ag zoning in 2014, all properties within the county were scored to see whether or not they qualified for farmland preservation and ag zoning. Parcels were scored based on land use policy, size of parcel, proximity to villages and cities and that nature. And the parcel does, at that point in 2014, does qualify for the Ag 1 and Ag 2 zoning. Again, we walked through some of the natural resource features. We shared and went through that in more detail in May, so I won't go through that again. We had the DNR and St. Croix County Highway Department review the application, and those findings are in your packet. And then we also walk through staff recommendation and findings. And similar to the action request, we reviewed the town comprehensive land use plan and land use policies, as well as the county's land use policy. We also took a look at number 3, the St. Croix County Farmland Preservation Plan, to determine consistency with that. At the last meeting in May, the committee requested that staff recontact the town of Kinnick to see if they wanted to reconsider their original recommendation of approval. And so they met to discuss that, and they chose to let their original recommendation of approval stand. So that's kind of what's been happening in the last 60 days. So the findings you see based on 1 through 5 would be the staff recommendation and the town recommendation. Some items for additional consideration for the committee tonight. Should the CDC decide to recommend disapproval based on public comments received at the June hearing, the following findings could be added to the above findings to support the disapproval. And again, in May, we went through the public hearing process. We had verbal testimony as well as emails. And based on public hearing comments and written testimony from area landowners provided at the May 18th, 2023 CDC meeting, the proposed Ag 2 district and ag entertainment activities would not be compatible with the existing development pattern. And we kind of looked at the maps previously. And that of the surrounding area, which includes developed single-family home lots of various sizes in the R2 district. And then lastly, we look at the R2 zoning designation, and within the town of Kinnick, about 80% of the land area is occupied by the R2 zoning district. The remaining zoning districts are conservation, publicly owned lands, or some areas of Ag 2 in different parts of the town. Within your packet, we pretty much replicated what was in your packet May 18th. So all the public comment that was written in email, you have in this packet as well. So that's pretty much the same information as last time. So that concludes the overview. Again, staff will be available if you have other detailed questions regarding some of the natural resource findings that we didn't go through in detail. We can certainly revisit those should the committee desire. That concludes the overview.
Thank you very much, John. At this point, I'd like to ask if there's anybody here who'd like to speak. And we'll start with we'd like to see if we have anybody here who'd like to speak in favor of. Please step up to the microphone, introduce yourself, and
Hello, my name's Tom Walden. I live in Kinnickinnick on Old Cemetery Road. Just wanted to start out by, just reiterating, thanking John. What I heard John say was the township, which you guys asked questions on a couple others, has approved it, and they chose to also take no more action on it. So it's kind of in the on deck circle. But a couple things I just, wanted to make a comment about is that, past practice in the township indicates this sort of thing has been allowed in the township in the past. So I just, this is not a new issue in the township at all. They followed the recommended process of the planners of the township. So, I mean, this has been lockstep with, I think, what everybody expects people to do when they want to make a change. Last but not least, I'm not going to drag it out with you guys. I've known Patty and Brian for 30 plus years. I've worked with them. They got tremendous amount of integrity. They got tremendous amount of just plain good sense that they're, I think that there's a belief out there that they're going to turn it into something that is going to not be a plus to the neighborhood. So I just think that I wouldn't stand up here and support it if I didn't think it was going to be okay for the neighborhood. I think that's I would really highly suggest you guys go ahead and approve it and let this all move forward. Thank you.
is there anybody else who'd like to speak in favor of this rezoning? Please step up to the microphone and introduce yourself. Please say where you're from.
Yeah. Brian Lawrence, and I'm the applicant, 331 County Road JJ. I'm not going to make it long. I just wanted to probably reiterate that, we followed what was recommended to be done for the process, all the steps of the way. And as a landowner and resident, I followed the steps and everything that was expected to be done. Our request is supported by the township, and it does, well, with staff recommendation as well, but it is in line with what has been done in the township and in the county. So I'm consistent with all the ordinances and stuff. And through talking to many of the neighbors, I think I wanted also just to make clear, we're not building anything new. I think some of it got, from what I've heard, out of context, that I was building some big event center, which I am not. And, we're focused on keeping a low-key thing out there, just an opportunity in my retirement to do stuff with our grapes that we have planted and utilize one of our existing sheds there. So with that, if any other specific things come up tonight, I would like the opportunity to clarify or maybe have a chance to answer if something else is raised, or of course, if you guys do. So thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to speak in favor?
I would.
Certainly. Please step up to the microphone and name, address, and say your piece.
I'll keep it really brief, too. I'm Patty Lawrence, co-owner of the property that we would like to rezone. And I just want to say that we're long-term St. Croix County residents. We have lived here about 24 years plus, raised our family here. And in retirement, a couple years ago, we planted a lot of grapevines with the intent that we'd supplement a retirement income, my husband's family farm raised, and do something that would be good for the community. We don't want to do anything that's detrimental to the community. In fact, I think this would be positive. A couple of the neighbors that spoke in favor of it last time couldn't make it tonight due to work commitments, and we didn't even realize there was going to be an opportunity to speak, or we might have given people a heads up. But when some are concerned about the neighborhood, I do want to point out on that chart where you see there's a church and then there's 4 homes along County Road J, there's also 37 acres of farmland behind that we own.
It's a farmland between County Road J and Cemetery Road. And we invested our retirement savings into that land because we wanted to preserve it. We want to make sure, in case hay prices go crazy, we have a place for our hay. We go horseback riding there, and we're continuing to farm that like we always did. That also, next to our property on J, that little long skinny rectangle that he said is an R2 lot, we own that as well. It is adjacent to the Bott Peterson family. They're on that other side of it, so we are not rezoning that. It's staying R2, and it's staying our horse pasture. So the view of everybody that people enjoy of our property from County Road J or JJ is not going to change. And our field behind their house that we own, that 37 acres, is not changing. It's not part of this. We bought it to preserve farmland. And our daughter and her boyfriend recently bought the 5-acre farm site on County Road J next to where that farmland starts. So we want to preserve values just like everybody. We love the community, and that's why we were pursuing this dream. Thank you. And we will continue to abide by any township or county ordinance, laws, whatever comes up. That's the type of people we are. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for the rezoning? Is there anybody who'd like to speak against the rezoning? Kindly step up to the microphone and say your name, address, and say your piece.
Dave Peterson, 1299 County Road J. I'd just like to, I think the committee has a right to know what transpired at the town meeting on June 6th. There were 4 board members from the town at that meeting. There was 1 person missing. The town chair was in attendance. At that meeting, approximately 20 of the residents opposing the Lawrence rezoning attended the June 6th meeting, and they brought to the attention of the board that they felt that because there was no requirement to notify immediate neighbors of something as significant as a zoning request, that in their opinion there was no problem. And nobody, not 1 person, had told any of the neighbors about this proposal. So there was some discussion, and then at some point then there came a motion by, and second by 2 of the town board members to attempt to find a compromise, to reconsider and find a compromise, and that failed by the 2-2 vote, with the town chair and 1 other voting against it. So it was a tie. 2 people felt it was significant. Then there was a motion to forward the rezoning request without a recommendation. That also failed on a 2-2 vote. And so I'll leave it at that. The town chair indicated he didn't have a problem with immediate neighbors not being notified. So that simply stated. The chair also stated county, and I'm paraphrasing, county does the zoning and the town recommendation has little effect. That statement was challenged by somebody else in the audience. And he stated zoning change for a gravel pit that was denied about 1.5 years previous to that by the town board, or by the county. The town board had no problem with that. So in my opinion, they kind of blew it off. And nobody seems to mention in this zoning request that this Ag 2 would allow a wedding venue with loud music and alcohol in a residential neighborhood. We feel it's totally out of place. Thank you. I would urge you to vote no. Vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? Step up to the microphone. Please say your name, your address, and what you have to say.
Hello, my name is Lisa Christensen, and I live at 1280 County Road J, across the road from the Lawrence property. 2 months ago, many of our neighbors came before you protesting the rezoning of 331 County Road Double J. Not many of us had heard about the rezoning request until we received your letter in the mail, and many of us were not happy. We are thankful that you pushed this issue back to the town board to review, but after our meeting in early June, it was clear that the board members, at least half of them, were not happy to see this back on the agenda. The board decided that they were not changing their minds on the recommendation after a new 2-2 vote on the issue. Even though a clear majority of the residents present at the meeting voiced their opposition to the rezoning, it just didn't seem to matter, and the board decided to kick the can back to this meeting tonight. They also seemed to be very annoyed with us. We were told that we should have been at the board meeting in early May when the initial decision was made. And just so you know, our township, all of the agenda meeting notices are published in the Pierce County Herald, and we live in St. Croix County, just so you know. And then just to let you know also, me personally, I learned a tough lesson with this whole thing that's been going on, this whole rezoning. It's easy to get caught up in our busy lives and not worry about what's going on across the road at the town hall every first Tuesday of the month. Our lives have been great. My husband and my life has been great. We've lived there for 17 years now. We've never really had any complaints about anything until the neighbor decided to rezone, and my attitude about being involved has changed 100%. Several of my neighbors and I have been to many meetings, including the CDC meeting in May now, and a couple of planning committee meetings as well, besides the town board meetings, and we will continue to be involved. I would like to let you know again that I do not want the Lawrence property to be rezoned. It is not appropriate. It is not big enough, with a good chunk of the property being in the Kinnickinnick floodplain. The rezoning would also stay with the property for future owners, and once it's rezoned, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So just wanted to let you know what my concerns are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. The next person like to come up?
I'm Cindy Maxwell. I live at 82 Emerson Valley Drive in town of Kinnickinnick. Before moving there, I lived within about a half a mile from the Lawrence property. I agree with the neighbors who think that this is an inappropriate siting for this type of enterprise, but I also have some additional reasons why I think the rezoning should be denied. Agricultural accessory use is a use that is incidental to an agricultural use of property. To be deemed incidental, a use must not be the principal use of the property, but is minor in significance to the principal use. An accessory use must be subordinate to a primary agricultural use and cannot be engaged in unless a primary agricultural use is actively maintained on the same parcel of land. Mr. Lawrence's property is 24 acres, and nearly half of the property is comprised of his residence, wetlands, and shoreland of the Kinnickinnick River, on which development in agriculture would be unsuited or unlawful. Only 14 acres are classified as agricultural in St. Croix County tax records, and on those 14 acres, Mr. Lawrence currently raises and boards horses. In his application, he states that he is requesting Ag 2 for ag entertainment activities, weddings, wine tasting, fall activities, etc. It's unthinkable how Mr. Lawrence can simultaneously maintain a primary agricultural use of his small acreage while at the same time offering his proposed ambitious array of ag entertainment. On such limited acreage, the proposed entertainment, instead of being minor in significance to the principal use, will easily surpass agriculture as the primary use. Any wedding venue, wine tasting venue, necessary parking facilities, and other associated development will quickly subsume the limited acreage currently used to keep horses. So even if the rezoning request is granted, ag entertainment would be impermissible because it could only be undertaken at the expense of any primary agricultural use and would cease to meet the definition of an accessory use. The request should also be denied as untimely. Mr. Lawrence stated at the May 18th hearing that he envisioned wine tasting, fall pumpkins and apples, Christmas trees, and horseback riding at his entertainment venue. But except for horseback riding, it will take years for these uses to be viable, so discussion of ag entertainment is moot. His small plantings of fledgling apples and grapes will not produce commercially for some time. Notably, the University of Wisconsin says a commercial apple growing business should be at least 30 acres. Christmas trees take 8 to 10 years to mature. He has no stated intent of producing wine, so presumably he means to sell wine produced off premises for wine tasting, more commonly known as a bar, not ag entertainment. He currently offers horseback riding on his property, so no rezoning is necessary to permit that activity. In short, Mr. Lawrence does not currently demonstrate the need to rezone his property, and the request should be denied.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Harriet Lansing, and I live at 1325 County Road J. I know your time is valuable, and I've attempted to condense my comments into 3 points. First, I join with the others in thanking you for referring the rezoning application back to the Township Board to give our community an opportunity to be heard. But as others have also said, we are here again today asking to speak, and that is because we're here because after spending a significant amount of time, the county or the town board was trying to decide whether they would give us the opportunity to speak at all. And after that got determined that we'd at least be allowed to speak, they, in a 2-2 vote, as it was pointed out by the other speakers, a motion by one of the town board members to even open discussion on possible resolutions on the issues was defeated on the 2-2 vote. We were told quite a few times that it is the county and not the town board that has the responsibility to make the decisions on zoning and rezoning. So that's why we're here. We're here to be heard by what apparently we're directed are the responsible decision makers. Second, as with many of our legal processes, and this was referred to by our previous speaker, and regulatory processes, what we call the burden of proof rests with the person or entity seeking the change or the exception to the regulations. Our Kinnickinnick Township's comprehensive plan focuses on preserving the rural character of our township and evaluating projects and actions based on how they improve the entire area, not just the property of one individual property owner. The current zoning regulation, as was referred to, is R2 for approximately 80% of the township. This defines the character of our community, and other speakers will say more on that. And of course, rezonings may be requested, but the purpose for allowing for rezoning requests is not to provide an avenue to sabotage or to end run the thought-through comprehensive plan and the regulations that are based on it. Rezonings are most appropriate where there may be some unusual characteristic of the land that places an unfair burden on the landowner, or where all of the surrounding property is in a different zoning area, and rezoning would regularize the area, or an unusual case where the landowner has suffered an unexpected hardship or natural disaster such as flood that would make the land unusable in its current zoning. But none of these factors are present here or even alleged. In fact, I understand that the applicant has or recently purchased, and this has been referred to, an additional large parcel of land not far from the subject property, although that has now apparently, even more recently, been transferred into his daughter's name. That property is also zoned R2. And of course, it's sensible to make investment use of property, but there are also other uses that can be made of it as time passes that are not necessarily beneficial to the community. He's also indicated that he's indicated to other R2 zone landowners that he's interested in purchasing their property. Purchasing property and attempting to rezone it to launch what is essentially a self-interested commercial activity does not really fit within the purposes of rezoning. So my third point is simply this, is to ask that the proper procedure be followed. When the applicant's burden of proof has not been satisfied, and they have not provided a supportable purpose for rezoning, the application should be denied. We're grateful to you for giving us the opportunity to speak at the previous meeting and again here today. And also grateful for the half of the town board who tried unsuccessfully to open up discussion on this issue, because they, as well as you, can see that what is going on here is not just a single, unsupported rezoning request, but the beginning of a more serious attempt with much greater possibility or danger for a change in the nature and character of this happy and very peaceful community. And it requires additional careful scrutiny and responsible evaluation, especially as we look at the reality of a rezoning, which is, it matters not what promises are made about the limitations that a person will voluntarily put on it at any given moment. What matters is what can be done with it in the event of a resale or a change of mind or a change of circumstances. So other people are going to speak about the nature of the community, and so I will defer to them.
Sir, your name and address and what you have to say.
Okay. My name is Alan Klein, and I live at 1325 County Road J. I don't know how many of you have made a visit to this site, so let me just try to paint a picture to illustrate its character. There are farms, homes, and woods all around the property, as far as the eye can see. And you saw that in some of the visuals that were shown earlier, some of the aerial views. There is no signage or other suggestion of any commercial activity in the area, at least none that I've seen. This is not an area that's already transitioning into commercial purposes. Not at all. It's farms, homes, and woods. Yes, there are some exceptions. There's our town hall, where we gather for government and other functions. There are occasional graduation parties or other events held there, but there's no alcohol allowed. Nobody's trying to make a profit on the fees. And immediately across the road from the parcel is the church. It's 155 years old, and it's a church that our community, through hard work by volunteers and charitable contributions, has maintained and kept in good repair to this date. Once a year, there's an ice cream social there to raise funds for the church. And weddings are occasionally held there, but the capacity is extremely limited, and again, alcohol is not allowed. A short distance from that, there's a cemetery where some of the earliest settlers of our community have their final resting places. For better or worse, there's no alcohol allowed there either. Down the road, there's a nature preserve where people can spend time in nature, hiking and observing a recreation of the original prairie. A number of special projects relating to bluebirds and other natural elements are held there. But none of these activities in the town hall or the historic church, in the cemetery or the nature preserve, change at all the basic rural character of this neighborhood. In fact, I think they support the community rather than detracting from it. This area is almost exclusively farms, homes, and woods. It's a highly unlikely place, in my opinion, to allow commercial operations that would alter the basic rural character that we want to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Hello. My name's Andrea Carpenter, and I live at 1292 County Road J. And as my neighbors have been talking, I made note first that I understand that some of this material is repetitive, but I think it's important for all of you to understand just how many of us have these feelings, and it also just feels good to be heard, especially after what you've been hearing of what's been taking place at our town meetings. So I'd like to start by sharing some of my thoughts just as a fellow neighbor, and I touched on this the last time I spoke during this meeting, just reiterating that our recent decision to purchase this home was made much like every home buyer in the market. There are boxes to check, boundaries to set, and lists of pros and cons that go into making such a big decision for both your family and your pocketbook. The area is beautiful, and it offers space, peace, and tranquility that we were hoping for as we all transition from our city homes. We have 4 very busy boys that seem to use up every square inch of our yard to play in. And we've put a lot of work into turning that yard into our favorite family hangout: fire pits, tiki lights, mason jars for the lightning bugs, a garden to maintain and harvest, and even a designated area for a ball game. All of it was exactly what we knew our family needed. Living directly across from a business would have definitely been on the con list, and I'm confident that several in the room would agree. When you invite general public into a secluded country community, neighbors have the right to feel anxious and exposed. The comfort and safety that we all want to feel while we're at home is jeopardized knowing that there are strangers in the area. Presumably, these strangers would have limited, if any, understanding of the roads and zero regard for preserving the area as us residents do. Not only would we worry about the consequences of a potential rezoning while living in our home, but I think it's important to consider the consequences when and if we are ever in a position where we would need to sell our homes. If this rezoning is approved, I can kiss some of our hard-earned equity goodbye because property values, especially those like ours, so close to the Lawrence parcel, would not be what they once were. The desire to live in the Kinney won't exist if it's being turned into an imposing tourist trap, or something worse, and you all know just how broad Egg 2 is. I'd also like to mention that some of us residents have been given the cold shoulder, and I could use the word disrespected, by our own Kinney board due to our lack of involvement on the front end of this request. And I have a side note here that if anybody is waiting for the Kinney board to take the responsibility of listening and giving an honest, educated recommendation or denial based on public opinion, don't hold your breath, because we were all there when you sent us back, and all of us showed up. People commented how many people were actually present and spoke, and nothing changed. I understand Mr. Lawrence has recently been stopping to discuss this matter with neighbors, our house included, but it seems quite backwards. It reminds me of my high school days when I would ask my parents for forgiveness instead of permission to break my curfew. If Mr. Lawrence wanted to make these neighborhood stops to let folks know about this vision when he first planted the vines and started grooming his property to serve his visions, the residents would have been much more informed, educated, and eager to be involved, just like we are now. Between working full-time, raising 4 boys who are involved in sports, volunteering, and trying to keep my own sanity, my days and hours are strategically prioritized. And I would have made the meetings a priority if I knew that there were items on the agenda that would affect my home and my family so significantly. Now, I also have professional experience to give a little insight. For nearly 15 years, I've been a real estate closing agent. That doesn't mean that I'm the salesperson. That means that I've sat at the closing table with all types of buyers and sellers, young, old, happy, sad, making both expected and unexpected changes in their lives when it comes to where they call home. My point is, this rezoning doesn't just pertain to the Lawrences and their vision. It will follow that chain of title to all future owners of that parcel. People move for proximity to their children, grandchildren, health concerns, family emergencies, unexpected income adjustments. The list goes on, and I see it every day. While we all think we know where we're going to be next week, next year, 5 years, 10 years, the fact of the matter is we don't. The Lawrences can't make guarantees to anyone that this rezoning won't snowball into something other than quaint small gatherings that they've described, because like the rest of us, they simply cannot predict the future. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Ma'am?
I'm Kelly Vaught. I live at 1297 County Road J, and we share a property line with the Lawrences. I would just like to state this isn't against the Lawrences. We were caught by surprise, and I think we were trying to catch up. But honestly, this is about the future and what rezoning could entail. Rezoning to Ag 2 of that property could produce many negative unintended consequences. By rezoning his property from R2 to Ag 2, he and future owners could possibly have or open any of the following businesses, and I'm going to whip through this list of what's possible and permissible: a manure processing facility, junk storage, fur farm, barn dances, manure storage, commercial dog kennel, dead stock hauling, weddings, sale and storage of egg byproducts, a club or lodge, winer, solar collectors, business conducted by owner, institutional or nonprofit community use. Agricultural entertainment and farm exhibitions or sales could happen 15 times a year with up to 100 people. With special permits, they could have over 15 events with over 100 people. It should be assumed that Mr. Lawrence and future property owners with zoning of Ag 2 would take full advantage of these allowed activities to their maximum benefit. Many of these uses would be inappropriate based on their location in a residential area, but would be allowable and very difficult, if impossible, to stop if the Lawrence property is rezoned. The ordinance is very broad and has a lot of non-specific parameters open to extensive interpretation. This would allow Mr. Lawrence and future property owners to run businesses not suited to a residential area. The proliferation seeming of venues in Kinnickinnick Township and endless potential for rezoning to Ag 2 in our small residential township is a matter of great concern. How much traffic and influx of people can the town infrastructure such as our EMS and small narrow roads realistically support? Will anyone who wishes to rezone and minimally meets the requirements be approved? Is any business I have listed potentially fair game for our community? What's the limit realistically? Where does it stop? We are asking the county to preserve our community's residential nature and character, and to take a close look at how these rezoning requests could have such negative consequences. Just because something is allowable doesn't mean that it is right for the area. I'd like to thank you all for listening and for giving us a chance to go back to our township and have them listen to us. And I just ask that you would reject this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak?
Hello, my name is Krista Paschal. I live at 372 Old Cemetery Road, which is approximately 900 feet from the Lawrence property across that field that Mrs. Lawrence was speaking of. I would like to inform the committee that Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence are already hosting events and have been doing so for a while without a permit. They have a Kinney River Farms Facebook page and have posted that they are all booked out, as well as photos from past events that they have hosted. According to their Facebook page, they are charging people for these events and do not have any event permit. This is clearly a violation and proof of them not following rules. How are we, as the neighbors most affected by the Lawrence hosting more events, supposed to trust that they will follow the rules of a rezone? We bought our land in 2013 knowing that there were very few commercial businesses in Kinney. We know that we would have to drive to Brewer Falls or Roberts for everything, and that was and still is very attractive to us. We looked at the ordinances in Kinney and we respect the rules of the town. One of the main reasons we bought our land is because Kinney is not a commercial area and limits building permits. We looked at building our home in a development which would have been significantly cheaper. but we chose to build in Kinney for the mental peace that we get after working stressful jobs. If we were to build our home in a development, we would not have had the extra expenses of running gas to our home for an additional $5,000 or digging a well and septic for an additional approximately $20,000, as well as paying the large property tax bill that we have to pay every year. But to us, those costs were worth the peace that we receive from sitting in our yard listening to nature after a stressful day. We do not live in a development, but it is communal living. We live close enough to our neighbors that we can hear each other, and everyone is respectful of that fact. This particular area is in a valley that sound echoes for miles. We can even hear 94 on quiet nights. Allowing a wedding venue, wine tasting event center is not appropriate in this area. The area around the Lawrence property is one of the most densely populated areas in the entire town of Kinnickinnick. Directly across the street from the Lawrence property, where the town hall is, and where he's proposing to put parking, is a baseball field that kids and families walk to. There are no sidewalks or crosswalks. Within 1,200 feet of the Lawrence property, there is almost 140 acres of DNR land on County Road J and Old Cemetery Road across from my property. This area is an outdoor oasis for trout fishing, deer, pheasant, and turkey hunting, bike club riders, kayaking, and hiking. On any given day or weekend, there are people parking on both sides of the Lawrence property on County Road Double J and J that are fishing off the two bridges. One of those bridges is about 800 feet where the entrance to the proposed parking that Mr. Lawrence would like is located. People actually stand on County Road J and Double J and fish right from the county road over the Kinney. There's a small parking area for maybe 2 or 3 cars there, and it's that Kinney runs right over his property where he pulls into his driveway. Also, the Kinney Preserve is less than a half a mile from the property. Again, this is a recreational area, not a place for commercial event center. Please deny the rezoning request and preserve the outdoor sanctuary as well as our mental health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
A lot of way smarter people have said things smarter than what I'll say. I'm Brian Bott. My wife Kelly and I live right here, right next to the Lawrences. This is not about the Lawrences at all. I have no issues with Brian and Patty. I have no issues. This is about the property. And this really blew me away. 80% of Kinney is Res 2. That really kind of shocked me. I thought it would be less than that. Both my parents grew up on farms. I grew up young on a farm. So this is not ag land right here. Let's be honest. This is ag land, but there's been a long time if there's ever been corn and beans there. But I just want to say this, it's the property, once it's rezoned, 80 bar the door. And then whoever wants to do anything they can do. We live right here, so obviously very close to whatever could happen. I mean, this right here, I don't know, somebody could build another building, set up a tent, do whatever, and we live very close. So I oppose it. And like I say, it's not about Brian and Patty, it's about the property. And I just don't think it fits in what has become a pretty residential area, quite honestly. So that's all. Thank you, and thank you for your time. And
Thanks very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay.
Hey everybody, my name is Dylan Kozier. I live at 1250 County Road J. I was here last time. Appreciate your guys' time here. I showed up about 10-15 minutes late, so I might have missed the first few people talking. So I really just listened to kind of some of the opposing stuff. I really didn't have anything kind of planned to really say up here, but I kind of see a common theme here, and I just kind of want to, so my background, I'm an engineer, and the number one thing that we learn in engineering is to be data-driven. Some of my biggest customers in the past were Ford, Tesla, GM, Subaru, the guys who paved the way for what we do today. And a lot of the things I've heard and I've kind of thought about is there's a lot of I think and I feel with a lot of some of the negatives that I've heard today. There was also a comment multiple times made about worried about the future. So if we take that stuff and we bring it into back to the engineering world, and you guys, you have a list of guidelines and rules that, when someone submits a document or a form and they apply for something like this, you have a checklist. Does it meet this? Does it meet this requirement? You go down that, and if people abide by it, they obey by it, that gives you guys permission to approve or deny, make your decision. And when I was in engineering and I was an engineering manager, we would go down the same type of process. If we ever used a think or a feel in designing something on a Ford vehicle, I've designed multiple parts for Ford F-150s. I've gone through recalls, in fact. And if we ever went down that think or I feel, it would lead us down a bad path. And so the biggest thing is, I guess, when you guys are looking at this here, just try to be data driven. That's kind of part of what your guys' task here is when you're reviewing to approve or deny this. So thanks again, and take care.
Out of fairness, is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Can I just clarify a couple things that came up?
No. If you have already spoken, I'm not going to entertain that. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Very good. We will end the public hearing. I'll check with council. Am I required to ask anybody, allow anybody else to speak a second time?
It's in your discretion as the chair.
Very good. We've gone an hour and a half. I think we've given it excellent period of time. So we will end the public hearing, and we're going to move into the committee's period of time here to take up the business item number 3. So how do we want to handle this?
I make a motion to approve the rezoning to Ag 2.
I'll second.
All right, let's go into our conversation. Who'd like to start?
I wanted to start off just saying I appreciate all of the comments and everything that we've heard for this meeting and the meeting before, but the issue before us today is on the rezoning, and a lot of what we hear today is on use. So they're two totally separate things. For whatever they decide to do on this property, they're going to need a conditional use permit to move forward on that. No?
Can we clarify that with zoning staff as whether or not conditional use permits would need to be approved by the Board of Adjustment? He's talking about something different than the rezoning and conditional use permit are two different processes. So if they wanted to have a wedding venue, would they need a conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shirley, the the Ag 2 zoning would allow ag entertainment activities as a permitted use up to 15 events per year. If there would be a number exceeding 15, then they would need a conditional use permit that would then go to the Board of Adjustment for consideration. So 15 is the threshold in this case. And those were the standards that were adopted in 2014 when the 2 ag zoning districts were created, and they have not changed since then.
I'll just continue on. Looking through all of this for the last few months, the Lawrences are correct. They followed the guidance. They followed the way that our statute works. If we look at our statutes like staff has and has recommended, they follow all of that. I would have a hard time denying somebody that's following exactly what we've created these statutes to be over the years. So that's why I'm moving towards approval.
Sean?
Yeah, I kind of just want to echo what Supervisor Shirley said. Is it is not our place to adjudicate the use. It is our place to adjudicate whether the rezoning request is fair and reasonable based on the plans from the township, the county, etc. So that's why I'm pushing for approval.
Jerry?
Well, I disagree. I'm in front of me on my computer. I have the number 6 that we saw earlier that John put up on the screen. That based on public hearing comments and written history, we've heard a lot of public comments and written history this evening and a couple months ago too, from area landowners. The proposed Ag 2 zoning district and the agricultural entertainment activities will not be compatible with the existing development pattern because the existing development pattern is private homes. It's private homes, it's families growing up, it's families enjoying each other's company. And I think that any kind of a commercial endeavor in that area, whether it's one of the people who are sitting in that corner who want to do something or the Lorenzes, and again, I have nothing against anyone, but I think that would violate that, and I think that would be enough reason for me to oppose it. I think we've heard so many people who oppose it for good reasons, and yes, they use the words "I think" and I'm guessing, but I think those are just words that are used in common speech. None of them claim to be engineers or wanting to be engineers or ever talking to an engineer, perhaps, and that's why I excuse that. I think based on what we've heard tonight, I would vote to not give the permit, to deny it.
The question is, under the current zoning, is there no way to do a conditional use permit for these types of events under the current zoning?
So if the committee recalls, back in May, we tabled it for 60 days. One, to see if the town would reconsider their recommendation. The second item was to talk to you in June a little bit about how the Ag 2 was created, if you remember, and we put together a PowerPoint to that effect. And one of the things that's available to the county as an option is that if the committee or board desires to amend the ordinance to reconsider the number of events per year before it goes to a conditional use, like right now it's 15, there wouldn't be anything preventing the county from considering modifying those thresholds. But unfortunately, the application came in when it did. We're living with the current code. For future reference, you can certainly discuss that and have thoughts about perhaps amending that. So that is possible.
However, you need to understand that would not affect, if you approve this rezoning, that would not affect this operation. If you amend the rules, it does not affect whatever you approve now or what the county board approves. So just you understand that changing the rules doesn't change it for this property.
The other thing I'd like to add to the committee is that any amendments that the county considers to the Ag 1 and Ag 2 district, we have to get those amendments approved by DATCAP, a state agency, the Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection. And the reason why that is because our Ag 1 and Ag 2 districts are certified districts for tax credits. And so in participating towns like the Cylon and the Stantons and the Baldwins, we need to certify those districts so they're valid, so they meet the goals of the program, so those property owners in those towns can get tax credits. So that's why it goes back to the state.
Not sure if I'm understanding if the question was answered the way I was thinking, but it's currently R1. Is that correct?
So the Lawrence property is currently R2.
R2, okay. And under R2, can they get a conditional use permit to do the type of events and the things that they want to do under a conditional use? Or is it prohibited in R2?
That would not be allowed in the R2 district.
So they can't get a conditional use?
Correct.
Okay, that answers that.
All right, so I'll take my opportunity to talk. I've given this a great deal of thought, and I have a fairly well defined understanding of what zoning is. And the reason that we adopt a zoning law is so that, and I believe that there's some basis in statute and case law for this. The reason that we have zoning law is so that a property owner can enjoy their property in the manner that they understood that they would have that opportunity when they purchased the property. So the people who we have to take into consideration here is not only the Lawrences, but the rest of the property owners adjacent to Lawrence's property. Now, I was involved with writing the statute that we're considering, so there was a suggestion that we follow the guidelines as if it's a checklist in an engineering manual and check the boxes. However, I was a full participant in writing that ordinance, our zoning chapter. And we overlooked the proximity of housing for agricultural entertainment, and I own that. I overlooked it, and everybody else did too. We should have considered the proximity of residential housing when we considered agricultural entertainment in our zoning code, and we need to change that. It's not the number of events, it's how close are the other properties where people actually live, and I wish that we had seen that and thought about it. I personally think that this is too close to other houses, and there's too many other uses that this property can be used for. The storage of agricultural products is a concern. Growing other livestock is a concern because we don't know who the property owner will be in 15 years, but this property will still be zoned agricultural in an area that continues to grow and be developed for residential use. So I honestly believe that it's inappropriate to zone this little piece of land as an agricultural use for whatever purpose. And that's my opinion, and I'm sharing it because that's what we're doing. We're conversing about this as a committee, not trying to influence each other, not trying to browbeat each other, because we respect each other. But it's important to me that you understand that the foundation of zoning is to protect everybody's right to enjoy their property the way they understood that they could when they purchased it, not just the biggest property in the section, but everybody who owns property around them. So, having said that, is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question, say their piece? Sure, Ryan.
I guess I'd just like to ask staff, and I think we asked this last time, but there are no concerns that I heard from staff that changing this zoning would create what we consider spot zoning, correct?
That would be correct. Within the respective comprehensive documents, comprehensive plan documents for the town, and then the farmland preservation plan map identified properties that could be zoned for agriculture. So those uses were contemplated and perhaps anticipated. Now, if we were here just randomly and didn't have any findings to support that decision, that would be spot zoning. But that's why kind of staff puts together the background, the consistency with the guide plans. They provide guidance on making decisions like this. So in this case, it would not be a spot zone.
Well, this is a tough one. I know it is, but I guess if we don't have anything else to say, we should put it to a vote. And what we're voting on, just to be clear, is to recommend to the county board that they approve this rezoning. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. The motion fails. We will recommend to the county board that they disapprove the rezoning. Thank you all very, very much. We'll move on to the next business item.
Do they have to take action to disapprove, or does it automatically happen?
Because the motion to approve failed, if you want to take a vote, but I'm assuming it's going to be 3-2 to
Right.
recommend disapproval. And so that is what we will say. The motion to approve failed 3-2, so the recommendation is to disapprove. Yes.
That being said, we will move on to the next business item, which is Town of Troy rezoning. And staff report from John.
One moment, please. So this next item for committee consideration is a rezoning request from the town of Troy. So in this case, even though the town of Troy has their own zoning ordinance and conducts their own public hearings, ultimately, according to state statute, the county does need to approve rezonings in towns with their own zoning. So that is why this item is before the committee. We have a number of attachments in your packet relating to the minutes, the public hearing notices regarding this issue. But in summary, the subject parcel is located in the very southwest portion of the town of Troy. It's approximately 35 acres in size, and the rezoning request is to go from exclusive agriculture to agriculture residential. If we zoomed in on this map, which I cannot do with this, but you would see that most of the parcel is wooded with some steeper slopes as the property goes from east to west. There's also a drop in elevation on the very bottom part of the property of about 60 feet. And so the town board made a finding that the parcel is not conducive for exclusive ag. They approved the rezoning, what they call, to a 50-50 farm plan choice. And what that would allow the applicant to do is conduct and construct 5 units. 1 unit would be constructed now, and then there would be a conservation easement on the rest of the property. And again, the town board felt it was consistent with their comprehensive plan. We as county staff reviewed the town comprehensive plan and found the request to be consistent. We do have other information in the packet, but I'm going to try and keep it short for purposes of time. So if you have any questions regarding any of the minutes, when we reviewed the item, all the public hearing notice requirements were met. All the appropriate actions were taken within the body of the minutes, so staff would recommend approval of this request to the committee.
Excellent. That's a perfect length of time for rezoning for Troy. Do we have any questions?
Chair Hansen, can I interrupt before we go forward on this one?
Very good.
Can I ask the committee whether or not they would make a motion to include on the Lawrence rezone the additional consideration and findings that were presented by the department as to whether or not those findings would then be forwarded on to the board, the county board?
We are going back to business item number 3.
Yes, my apologies for not catching it before.
All right.
Staff moved on to this one.
We are going to set Troy aside, go back to business item number 3, and we are going to go back to what page in the packet?
Packet page 87 and 88.
Packet page 87 and 88. These are additional considerations in the staff report. Additional considerations number 6 and 7, packet page 87 and 88. And our Corporation Council is recommending that we have a motion adopting, clarify that.
If someone would make a motion to adopt those additional considerations for disapproval, so that those additional considerations could be forwarded on to the county board.
All right, so we're actually, and we had discussed this during our, this came up during our conversation. And I'm going to read this. Number 6, based on public hearing comments and written testimony from area landowners provided at the May 18th, 2023 Community Development Committee meeting, proposed Ag 2 zoning district and agricultural entertainment activities would not be compatible with existing development pattern of the surrounding area that includes developed single-family home lots of varying sizes in the R2 zoning district. And number 7, the R2 zoning designation is present over approximately 80% of the land in the town of Kinnickinnick. This zoning district supports the town's transition from agricultural uses to residential uses. The town's residential areas are not always compatible with ag tourism activities in all areas of the R2 zoning district. So,
You could also add tonight's date.
right, so we would change that from May
I
8th.
would put both in.
Right.
18th and July 17th,
May 18th and July 17th.
since you had a public hearing tonight.
Right. So what Corporate Relations Council is asking for is a motion adding this to our recommendation to, Jerry, you got that?
Yeah, I make it a motion, we add number 6 and 7 to the first 5 that are above that, for that reason.
July.
Yeah, and also add in there, yeah, May 18 and the July, whatever date it is today.
July 17th, that's
Yep, that should be added in there also.
Second.
Motion seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
3-2. Love that consistency. Motion passes. And we'll move on now back to the town of Troy. Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
And again, just going back to the Town of Troy rezoning request, this is a little bit more detailed survey of the parcel. You can see the irregular shape. We have the steep slopes on the east side of the parcel, and then the heavily wooded area in the northwest side of the parcel. The parcel size is 35.2 acres. And again, the town board approved the rezoning, and they're asking county consent to move forward.
Okay, so we were just about to ask for a motion on that. Town of Troy.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. We'll call that unanimous. Lovely, I like that.
Thank you.
And resolution to accept 10 wells from Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to be used for long-term aquifer monitoring. And that will be Tim. Yeah, and this is not Tim. What is your name? Adam. Adam. Yeah, I know Adam. Of course. Hi, Adam.
How's it going? Alrighty, good evening. Tonight we're just going to be discussing accepting groundwater monitoring wells from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. So a little overview is that Wisconsin DNR established these monitoring wells back in 1984 in response to TCE found in the groundwater from multiple sources. TCE work is now completed for these 10 wells, and now the DNR has now offered these wells to St. Croix County for groundwater work. Since then, county staff has reached out to the landowners in which these wells reside on. 5 landowners have agreed to have these wells remain installed for long-term monitoring, and 2 landowners did not desire to have these wells used for long-term monitoring. These wells are currently reside in the town of Hudson. The table represents where the wells are located based on parcel ID, property owner desire to keep these wells, well ID information, and lat long location for these wells. Tonight we are just proposing accepting 7 monitoring wells from the Wisconsin DNR. Here's a generalized overview map of where these wells are located in the town of Hudson. As you can see, 3 wells are located along County Road A, 2 wells located along Meadowwood Lane, and then 2 additional wells located along Green Mill Lane. These wells are in relatively easy, accessible locations for county staff to access, and 2 property owners would be notified 2 weeks prior before staff enter the property to collect groundwater elevation data from these monitoring wells. Just a generalized look at what these look like out in the field. As you can see, they're adequately protected with steel bars surrounding them as well to prevent any vehicle from hitting them. In addition to, each well is adequately locked with a locking mechanism to prevent anyone from the general public opening up these wells. And lastly, we currently own a water level meter. This device would be utilized twice per year to collect water elevation samples from these 7 monitoring wells. Do you have any questions for me regarding accepting these 7 monitoring wells from the Wisconsin DNR? Thank you.
Guess 2 questions for you. One is, what will be if we accept these and take these over, and we're going to do the monitoring, is what I understand you're saying?
We are just going to be monitoring, not TCE. We're not going to go down that realm. Right now, we're just deploying this water level meter. This is currently what the DNR utilizes, and we currently have one in Baldwin, and we're just going to be collecting this water elevations for our aquifer that we heavily utilize. Currently, right now, the DNR has about 20 years of data for all these 7 monitoring wells, and we just want to continue building on that data from these wells.
So then the questions would be the cost to the county for continuing the monitoring and doing it, and then number 2 is the county's liability if we're taking over ownership of those wells.
So the cost is upfront, is that they're just proposing that we accept these wells. There's no upfront cost, but over time, Tim and I have been discussing that probably these wells will probably last about 20 years. It's probably going to cost around $1,200 to close these wells if we take ownership of them right now. But we can cut down probably half the cost if we kind of close them ourselves. There's other ways to do that to cut down the cost. And I forget the other question. I apologize. I guess the liability aspect of things, these wells are kind of in the ditch bottoms. They're not in a very high density area where people are going to be walking onto these wells and kind of hitting them. They're adequately protected. They have locking mechanisms on there to prevent anyone from opening them up. And I'd say probably very low risk for having these wells if we take over these wells.
Okay, you mentioned that these wells have about a 20-year life. Yep. How close to 20 years old are these?
These were first installed back in 1983. And we've gone out there and looked at them, each individual well, and they're all cased adequately and they're well protected. You can open them up and look at the PVC all the way down. We're able to stick our water meter all the way down for all the wells. There's nothing in the way to block them at the moment, like tree roots or anything in that matter.
Follow-up question, are we going to get $1,200 value out of these before we have to spend $1,200 to plug them?
I think this would be a very good resource to have just for monitoring our aquifer. Just over time, we begin to build trends. We see more climatic changes throughout the time where we see serious droughts. These wells are not like residential wells, where residential wells are utilized every single day and they begin to draw down over time. These ones are stagnant. They're going to accurately depict what is going on with our aquifer. So I believe this 20 years extra data would be very vital for the county.
Okay, thank you.
I could address that a little bit too. Since 2013, 2014, when we had the water quality study group, acquiring monitoring wells has been a goal of the county, and there's never been resources, there's never been enough money to do that, and there's never been property owners necessarily who've been willing to allow that to happen. So this is kind of cool that we're actually acquiring some wells for almost nothing. $1,200 is pretty good. I'm kind of happy about it. but you're not monitoring for nitrates or any other substance down in the water? I know that.
At this time, we wouldn't be monitoring any nitrate concentrations in these wells, as this area, we typically do not find our high nitrate concentrations, but there is an opportunity somewhere along the lines that we can do that in the future, but for the time being, we are just going to be currently monitoring the water elevation.
I imagine you'll have to get permission from the property owner and communicate with them before you test for a substance other than what was in the original agreement. Is that right?
The original agreement was just allowing county staff to access these wells. We have verbal commitments and email correspondence, and I have a lot of people's email addresses as well. We just shoot them an email 2 weeks prior, or
I'm just wondering how that works. That's all.
Yep.
I'm not. Okay, great. Any other questions? All right. Do we have a motion? Anybody?
Guess I'd make a motion to approve.
To accept.
Accept.
From Wisconsin DNR.
From the Wisconsin DNR, the wells in Hudson Township.
Second. Second. All right, good. We have a motion and a second to accept the 10 wells from the Wisconsin DNR. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next order of business, this looks like we're cooking right down, is a financial report, which was supposed to be Ken. Ken's not here. Anybody like to talk about financials?
I can play Ken if you want me to, Ellen.
That'd be great, yeah.
The financial report is in your packet. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay. Yeah, you need to make a little joke.
Preferably a pun.
It'd be great. I once knew a fisherman's daughter. Oh, we can't talk like that. Okay, I didn't see anything that was. If you have any emails that you'd like to send to Ken concerning financials, please do so. Otherwise, that here ends the financials. Annual report. Ellen would like to talk about the annual report. Run through some highlights.
Yeah, so last year when we ran through some highlights, there was some good feedback from you guys. And so we will be doing the annual report at the August county board meeting. And so just wanted to give you a few highlights and see if there's any feedback or any comments on any of that. I'll keep it brief, but we actually are doing pretty good. It's not quite 7. Whoops, paperwork got shuffled around. So, a few things for our 2022 annual report. As you are aware, we contracted with Stantec for professional stormwater review services to assist with land use administration and enforcement as directed by the county strategic plan. We also contracted with another single individual company to provide assistance with soil test reviews, and those we were able to get completely caught up and then also stay ahead through our turnover last year in staff with reviewing sanitary applications. So that worked out very well, and we're continuing those contracts. And with Stantec, they also provided us with assistance in training our existing staff, which we think is a really positive thing to continue to do. And they are continuing to assist us with more complicated applications with stormwater with all of our plats, major plats. And I would also say that so far we feel like it's been all their recommendations and assistance has been very professional and knowledgeable, and the suggestions they've made and work they've done with development industry through our staff has been very well received. So also, as you might recall, we did a rewrite of the portions of the floodplain zoning overlay district, moving it to its own standalone ordinance, plus also bringing it up to date with some statutory changes. There was some updates to our Chapter 15 zoning ordinance, which were well accepted and approved. Again, we are at the point where we probably have a few more changes to make based on some of the decisions made today and some of the conversations we had at the last couple meetings. A few other things we did. Groundwater quality activities, we increased the number of nitrate screening clinics from 4 to 5. We had them spread throughout St. Croix County. There was a increase in the number of our screening clinic samples. We went up from 300 and some to 400 and some. That went over very well. We continue to do our citizen monitoring program with 180 wells to establish our baseline data. This year will be the 5th year, but we'd like to continue a lot of that, and there are other things we really hope to do, which we'll bring up in our as we keep going through budget. There was verification of our sinkhole remote sensing data, and that was completed, that field verification. The Glen Hills Group Campground construction was bid out and awarded to Derrick Building Solutions, which then constructed our 15-unit group campground, 9 RV campsites, and 6 tent campsites. The RV ones had electric and water hookup, and the tent ones had electric hookup. That did open this year in June, and it's going very, very well. They are very well received. The 3 small group shelters are very attractive, very useful. The size and layout of the facilities are very nice. The large shelter, I don't believe it's been reserved for a large group event yet, but it's very attractive, and we're expecting it will be very popular. Support facilities for that was also completed, including a new sanitary dump station. That sanitary dump station and associated sanitary system was sized not only for this campground of 15 sites, but also for the planned future 25 campsites, which would have water hookup, and for a future restroom shower building to support that campground, those campground areas. The Orff Family Overlook on Bass Lake, we added another 180 feet of boardwalk approximately. For now we have a total of 386 feet of boardwalk along the shoreline, plus a shoreline trail that was done. Railings and benches were added to the viewing platform. Pedestals were installed for our educational nature panels on the boardwalk, and that final development with just installation of the nature panels will be done. This is underway this year, including pouring cement pads for the ones that are on the upland trail. So it's going very well, and that park should be ready, totally complete. It has been open and does see people going there. Some additional things, we spent the past 2 years really helping with build the GIS database for the new NG 911 mapping platform. And that was quite a bit of work. We're still assisting with providing mapping and addressing assistance. I'm sure you probably all know this, but this was the first county in the state to go to NG 911, and doing that presented many challenges in terms of bringing our address database and our address information into the refining it, changing it so it would meet the needs of NG 911. And I have mentioned this in the past, but I will mention again that the amount of work needed to continue to maintain that database means that there will need to be another additional GIS staff person in the near future to continue to do that work on an ongoing basis. Some other things that have been going on. Last year we talked a lot about, there was some effort and some discussions about having an online permitting system. We have found one, and we have signed a contract. GeoPermits permitting software we're moving forward with. We have a 6-month contract for installation, for transferring all of our existing permits, that kind of thing. This is a how would I say it here? It is an online web-based technology, provides all types of permits throughout their life cycle, streamlines workflows, reduces the need for a lot of office visits, increases automation, communication at all levels to all parties involved, online payments, and it should also dramatically reduce the time it takes to actually send the permits out, that kind of thing, setting up the thing. So it'll have 24/7 access. None of it will need additional hardware or other software purchases because it'll be completely web-based. So we're very excited about this. It'll be accessible from PC, laptop, iPad, tablet, smartphone. So all that sounds like it's going to work really good, and the cost is more upfront than the other ones we looked at, which were more ongoing costs. We think that's going to be really positive because it'll be a lot less ongoing The upfront costs, we're taking it out of the land records money because that money is allowed to be used for improving public access to data, but it's not allowed for ongoing maintenance and ongoing operational costs. So that's how we're able to swing it. In addition to that, our existing web guide Extreme, which has been super popular, we are moving to a new software called Beacon. We've started that and we expect to go live this September. It should improve our interactive online access. It should have all the same features Web Guide Extreme had, but be even better. So I'll leave it at that for now. And then finally, LandNav is a new software that replaces GCS, same company. That is the property that we use for real property description, and also our county treasurer uses for property tax and collection software. So our community development real property staff had actually already been using LandNav on a testing basis. We're set up because, again, GCS is replacing that. And so we are partway there, but not all the way. And our county treasurer intends to migrate to that in 2024 or 2025, depending on when funding is available. But we've already paid for some of that, and we will have to pay a little bit more for that upgraded software. But it should be reasonable and be able to partially be paid for through land records. So we completed, as you know, because we provided you with the results, the survey for working on our county comp plan. We have both an online survey and a survey through the UWRF Survey Research Center. We also did an online survey of camping at Glen Hills Campgrounds, which we've also provided you with those updates already. There'll be summaries of those in our annual report. Something that'll be coming up is an update to our outdoor rec plan as we come up on 5 years. So again, I'm just kind of giving you highlights. Another big highlight is we have been working, and we've shown you in the past, the map. It's been in our annual report every year for our cost-shared practices. This year, staff in Tim's Resource Management Division actually was able to put in some extra time and over the winter and spring, and we now have increased from about 10 plus years of data. We now have 20 full years, actually 22 years of data on cost share practices that are mapped in our county, and in addition, we've added all stormwater features that are mapped in our county. So it's going to be pretty cool. So it's pretty exciting. Some other things we've had, we went to QR codes, as we've mentioned, for our selling our passes, and put them out there in order to frustrate and hopefully stop the thefts from our drop boxes. And that has been so far very, very successful, we feel. Just looking at where revenue is at compared to a year ago, it's not as high as it was in 2021 during COVID, but we are up by about 30,000 as of the end of June in revenues. And we think a lot of it's to do with the QR codes, the convenience of them. I'd also say that total passes sold last year. So this is kind of interesting. We think of 2020 and 2021 as our super high years due to COVID, and they were. We sold a total of 12,000, almost 13,000 passes in 2020 for parks. In 2021, we sold almost 12,000 passes. Last year in 2022, we sold 12,400. So we're still up there. The numbers are still really high. The attendance at our parks is still very, very popular. So I just thought I'd share that. Also was interesting in checking, in-person purchase of passes is still the number one way, but online is at 74%. But our passes, we sold about 26%, and the QR code is great, like we said, already at 20% and is really exceeding self-registration. There's only about 8% still doing that. And I expect that will drop off quite a bit. We actually still have those self-reg stations sitting in a couple locations, but we're not, I think there's really no need to keep purchasing those self-reg passes once we start to run out, so. Or we'll need the passes, but the QR code will prevent us from needing to actually see any money change hands there. So those are a few of the highlights. I had, let's see here, one more I was going to too many pages as we keep working and scribbling all over our documents here, that I'm kind of getting them right in shape for what we're doing. But any questions on what I mentioned so far? Any thoughts, feedback? Okay, I understand. So with that, I would just add that Julie was doing some work and looking at where we are at, since it has been 12 years since we took 10 years, excuse me. And in 10 years, park passes sold have increased by over 100%. And also camper unit days, which is, oh, that was the other thing I was going to mention. But camper unit days, which is the actual number of days that people camp at our campgrounds in 10 years, has increased by over 100% also.
Wow.
I think that's pretty amazing. I think it's pretty great, so.
Ellen, I'll just quickly add, just
Sure.
For people who are curious about the QR codes, you know, we haven't had them up super long.
No.
And they have been, the QR codes we have in our parks right now, as of today, have been scanned 2,330 times. They don't all result in a park pass purchase, but the codes have been scanned over 2,000 times since we put them up earlier this year.
Yeah, and the one other number I was going to give you, I just was, thank you, Julie, gave me a few seconds to catch up, but camper unit days as of last year, we've increased every year by a lot. For instance, in 2020, it was at 3,868 days of camping, and this last year, 2022, it was at 5,185. So when we talk about there's a lot more work, a lot more pressure, and a lot more great revenue, but also a lot happy residents who like coming to our parks over and over again. And I think that's true with all of the facilities we have and all of the things we're doing. I think that there's a lot of positive. I mean, I could get into more detail and was going to, but that's okay but it comes to our outreach and our education, when it comes to our land and water staff, when it comes to our land use staff, and when it comes to our support staff. So they're all doing a fantastic job and working really hard. I'll leave it at that. If you have any thoughts, please let me know.
It's worth saying that those jump in park attendance and usage correlates with the beginning of a real excellent 10-year program of rehabilitating parks. It demonstrates what happens when you put investment into the parks. It's definitely there. So this is your last Community Development Committee meeting?
Yes, it is.
And it's the beginning of a new era for you, and I want to thank you for 30-some years of just a stellar career. And I think we're very lucky to have had you here, and good luck with everything that you do from here out.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's my announcement.
All right.
Correspondence, announcement and correspondence.
So I do have one. Brett Boudreau asked me to let you know that on upcoming agendas, Brett, John, and Nicole will be bringing sections of the county comp plan for your hopefully short review, and they will adjust that based on how heavy the agenda is, and with the intent that they should be fairly quick and easy. We've gone through the tougher sections, and we'll be looking at giving brief updates, and then brief review, and I don't really know that there's expected to be any comment, feedback, that kind of thing, but not necessarily motion every time, because there might be additional adjustments and that kind of thing. So he wanted me to tell you that, and that was about the only future agenda item I have.
And future agenda items. Oh, did you want to make a comment? Go ahead. No, make an announcement.
No, I was in attendance of the meeting up in Amory for the zoning and ordinance classes, and they had the state put on an excellent program up there. It was very well attended by most people from Polk County, but we did have some representatives, including our Board of Adjustment chair, and they gave out some updated, some current information, things that we're going to be seeing some changes. So just wanted to pass on. Thanks.
Those things that we do like that, and I've been working with the Counties Association on considering how we contract with UW Extension, because a lot of the other counties have concerns about the costs and input that they have, and so I could go on. We could have great conversation, and maybe we should make it an agenda item to talk about UW Extension and how they're contracted. And I think you may have some feelings and thoughts. Perhaps we should do that, but not tonight, not now. But there's things that we do outside of the committees, and it's excellent to bring back, and maybe we should make agenda items when you have feedback like that. Okay, anything else? Yes, sir.
I'll forward this out, and with Ellen, you being your last meeting, I'm not sure. We'll figure out where to forward this to. But I would like a future agenda item to talk about the discussion of a future amendment to Chapter 15 for either detached and or attached accessory dwelling units. For those that don't know what that is, it's a smaller living space that is either attached or separated from a single family home, but it's on the same property in the same legal description.
Mother-in-law.
Right, right. So which St. Croix County is one of the ones in this area that don't allow it. Our neighbors to the north and the south and the east all do. And it also gives a little flexibility, and the way I was approached and talked to about was with the rise of nursing home costs, a space for elderly parents to not live in the house necessarily.
Very easy to enter into another a conversation which wasn't on the agenda, and we light up when we start talking about that. So let's yes, we'll put it on an agenda.
So I will forward that out to Ken, and then we'll figure out where in the department that's going.
Yep. John will get on that, I'm sure, and we'll. I got it right here. Yep. It's always an interesting and lively conversation, and thank you for bringing it up. Anything else? I want to talk about having an ordinance. The idea of having a zero. What do we call it? A manure. Not importing manure for industrial purposes. What would we call that? A zero gain or zero sum manure ordinance, which would not prohibit farmers from bringing in a truck or two of turkey manure for just using on a field, but would also prohibit any entity from bringing in hundreds of truckloads of manure for any other purpose, industrial purpose. And I'd like to talk about what that looks like and have a real conversation about creating that ordinance. So that would be a future agenda item, please. Any other agenda items? Yes.
Just a reminder for anybody who signed up or wants to sign up for the workshop on the water leaving from Stillwater this week, we can probably still get you on the boat. Next week, sorry. Also, this week is the fair. So come on out to Glenwood City, have a picnic.
Oh, we are mixing up announcements and agenda items. We are tired. Anybody have an agenda item or announcement? Good. The date of the next meeting is Thursday, August 17, 2023. And don't forget, we have a committee of the whole tomorrow morning at 8:30. With that, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very, very much.